Okay, welcome to another edition of Mariner Biology YouTube channel. We're going to be walking through a problem from the AP Biology text. It's question number 7 from chapter 14, the chapter review. So here's the problem, okay? And they've given us some good information in the question. The main thing we want to look at is what the parents are. And we're looking at the genotypes of F1 individuals in a tetrahybrid cross. So we've got 4 different gene loci that we're looking for, or looking at. And we know that both parents are going to be heterozygous at every location, or every locus, I should say. Okay, so let's draw that out. So here's the cross we're thinking about. And what the question is asking is, what is the likelihood of having an offspring with a certain genotype? And they've given us 5 different genotypes, and they want to know the likelihood of having an offspring with that genotype as a result of this tetrahybrid cross. Okay, so let's do question number 1, write that out. And what we're thinking about here is what's the likelihood or the probability of getting a recessive allele from each parent. And they each have 2 to give, so it's the flip of a coin situation again. And we've got it's 1 out of 2, probably 1 out of 2, that we're going to get a dominant allele, and the same for a recessive allele. So this offspring's gotten a recessive allele from each parent. The individual probability for receiving that recessive allele is 1/2. So we just multiply those 2 probabilities together. So we have a recessive allele and a recessive allele. So it's 1/2 times 1/2. That's the rule of multiplication. And that's going to give us 1/4. Okay, so we have a 1 out of 4 chance of getting this homozygous recessive genotype for this locus. Okay, so let's get rid of that and just write in the 1/4. And it's going to be the same for each of the others. So for B, C, and D, we're going to see the same thing. And then all we have to do is multiply them together, and when we do that, we get 1 in 256. So we have a 1 in 256 chance of having an offspring with this genotype from the tetrahybrid parents. Okay, so B. Now we've got heterozygous genotypes at every locus, and if we look at the parents again, we have a 1 in 2 chance of getting a dominant allele and a 1 in 2 chance of getting a recessive allele. Okay, so we can just multiply those 2 together and get 1/4. But there's 2 different ways we can get it. We can get the dominant allele from one parent and the recessive. So let's say parent number 1 gives us the dominant allele, parent number 2 gives us the recessive. It could also be that parent number 1 gives us the recessive and parent number 2 gives us the dominant. So we've got an OR situation, and we know that we have to use the rule of addition when we have an OR situation. So we have to take the probability of those 2 separate events and add them together. Okay, so let's do that. Same deal. It's going to be 1/4 again, 1 out of 4. So we have to add those 1/4 together, which is going to give us 1/2. Okay, so let's erase all that and just write the 1/2 in there, since we know how we got that now. And it's going to be the same for every other gene locus, right? We have heterozygous genotypes at each location, so what we're going to do is just multiply each individual probability together to get the likelihood of having an offspring that's all heterozygous for every gene locus. And that's going to be 1/16. Okay, and let's look at C now. So this time we've got all homozygous dominant, and that's really the same problem as A. It's just we're dealing with the homozygous dominant genotype instead of the homozygous recessive genotype. But the likelihood of getting this genotype for these 4 loci it's the same as A, right? That's how we got our 1/4. Okay, and we're going to erase that, put the 1/4 up there. It's going to be the same for each of the others. And then we're just going to multiply those 4 together and get 1 in 256 again, just like A. Okay, so now we're going to mix it up a little bit in D. We're going to have some heterozygous genotypes with some homozygous genotypes. Alright, so let's see what's going on here. So we remember, when we have a heterozygous genotype, there's two different ways we can get it. So we have to get the probability of each individual event. So the probability of getting a heterozygous genotype, again, was, right, 1/4 plus 1/4, so we get the 1/2. And for the homozygous conditions, it's pretty straightforward. And then we end with a heterozygous genotype again, so it's 1/2 times 1/4 times 1/4 times 1/2, and that's going to give us 1/64. Okay, so we have a 1 in 64 chance of having an offspring like that. And then the last question, we've got a mix again. Okay, but this time we have 3 homozygous genotypes and 1 heterozygous one. So when we work that all out, we end up with 1 in 128. So we're 1/128th of a chance of having an offspring with this genotype. All right, sorry it's a little bit rushed. I hope it helps, and we'll see you on the next one.